Yeah, it's going to take me a couple of minutes to go through this list of people. First, let me start off by thanking my wife, Sharon. Everything you see here today is because of her. I wouldn't have been able to do any of this if it wasn't for her. So she's the first to thank. Secondly, I want to thank Auntie Brenda and Ingrid. Auntie Brenda and Ingrid came in to see my mom a few days before she passed. They were able to tend to my mom, comfort my mom in her last few days. They were able to change my mom, do a number of things that I heard. I wasn't there that day, but when they came and they told me, it was very impressive. Thirdly, I want to thank Oscar. Oscar was the person who took care of my mom's house. My mom had a fall in 2014. She ended up coming to live with me and Sharon. And Oscar would drive from Miami, and he would come and he would do the work, and me and him would go to Home Depot, and he would do more work, and then he would sleep on the floor, and he'd drive back to Miami. It was crazy. So I really want to thank him for the stuff that he did for her during that time. That's without question. Thirdly, I'm going to go through the list. There's a list of people. Obviously, I want to thank my sister for coming all the way from England to be here. I'm going to try to get through this list as quick as I can. I want to thank Frederick and Akeisha for the stuff that they did to come to our house. I want to thank Wilton and Karina. I want to thank Theo and Latoya, of course, my daughter Toya and her kids. I want to thank Steve, Sam, and Allison, the whole Tudor family. When my mom passed, the first person I called was my wife, and then I called my son, and then the next person I called was my friend Steve. I called Steve. I've known Steve for 30 years now, and I called him. He's one of the first people I called, and so as yet again, I want to thank you and your family. I also want to thank Zena and your husband Edwin for being here. I want to thank you guys for being here. Also, I want to thank my next door neighbor, Paula. She helped us out during this week, came over and helped my wife do some stuff. I also want to thank, go through the list here. I want to thank Doug and Carol. Doug has been with me for 30 years or more. Carol has known me for that long. They've been with us this week. I want to also thank my good friend Paulette Williams in England. Paulette's been calling me all week. The messages she's left me is crazy. So I want to thank Paulette. I want to thank all my sister-in-laws, Peggy and Brenda and Vanda. And I want to thank my nephews, Trey, Ade. I want to thank Martin, my brother-in-law, and Moui, my brother-in-law. So if I missed anyone, of course I want to thank Claude and Wendy. Lastly, I want to thank Hubert, because Hubert was the first person of the family that was here when my mom came to Jacksonville, and he helped her in the early days when she was trying to do her CPA and things like that. So I want to thank you and the time that you spent with my dad, Uncle Fred, of course. So I want to thank you for that. And lastly, I want to thank my good friend G and his wife Ida. When my mom passed, the day my mom passed, I called G. I said, G, I need you to do something for me. He said, yeah, I got you. What do you need? All right, no problem. I said, I'm going to be home 10:30. So 10:30, he show up. Everything ready. I said, okay, cool. He left. So I called him on the phone, and I said to him, you're a really good friend, Here, read to me. Don't tell me though. I don't want to hear that in just me, you talking. You got to say them kind of thing in public. I said, all right. I'm saying it in public. You understand? Right? So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank all the people all over the world that are listening to this. Yes, that's my friend G. Look, you said I'm right there. That's you right. So I want to thank everyone. Everyone, if I missed your name, it's not because I didn't think of you. I just had too many people to get through. Okay. So let me get started. I wrote this in my own words. I've been working on it all week, so hopefully I get through it. Mrs. Petronella Adriana Fontenelle was born in British Guyana on June the 9th, 1931. To her parents, Mr. Hubert Alexander Lees, Mrs. Catherine Elizabeth Lees, they grew up on East Street in Campbellville, Georgetown, Guyana, and they moved to Craig Street near Border Market. Her parents had 11 children: Dorothy Davis, Muriel Hunt, John Lees, Donald Wason, Petronella Fontenelle, Joseph Lees, those were the twins. You had James Lees, Ethelyn Critchlow, Brenda Gill, Fritz Lees, and Winston Lees. Mrs. Petronella Fontenelle was married to Claude Fontenelle, aka Uncle Fred. They were married for 45 years until his passing in 2004. They had 4 children: Claude Osbert, Wendy Elizabeth, Marcel Ewart, and Natalie Pamela Fontenelle. She has 12 grandchildren: Melanie, Vanessa, Ruiz, Theo, Toya, Roxana, Monique, Blake, DeAndre, Tiffany, Giselle, and Robert. And she has 10 great-grandchildren: Josiah, Kayla May, Theo Jr., Jeremiah, Kaleem, Kyrie, Joel, Chosen, Petronella Whitaker Lewis, who's 4 years old, and Astrid Donald Best, 2 years old. Growing up in Guyana during colonialism was difficult, to say the least. My mom would often remind me of what life was like back then. They had no electricity and no running water in their homes. Her father would light a kerosene lamp that they had to move around the house because that was the only lamp that they had. In those days, you had to hurry up and do everything you had to do. Because, as my mother would always say, her famous saying was, don't put off what you could do in the day to wait till nighttime to light fire stick. Even though things were tough, under all those circumstances, she was always first in every subject in school. She sat in the front of the class and graduated from high school always being first. Think of that for a minute. You know what it is to be first in every single subject in school. Auntie Brenda would tell us that she would ride her bicycle fast to get to school, and she always had books underneath her arm. After leaving Allen Zion High School in Queenstown in 1947, she went on to become a teacher at the same school. She told me that Clive Lloyd, the famous cricketer, was one of her students in her class, and he always used to have a bat under his arm. I used to love that story. I used to go around and boast to all my friends in school. After teaching, she went on to study nursing and become an RN at the Georgetown Hospital in Guyana. After years of teaching and nursing, she received a scholarship to go to England in 1958. She lived with her sister, my Auntie Muriel, who had immigrated to England some years earlier in 1949. At that time, West Indians who moved to England were called the Windrush generation. The ship, the Windrush, had sailed from Jamaica to England in 1948. The West Indians were invited there by Britain to help rebuild the country after the Second World War. West Indians, like my mother, were pioneers of the Black Britain that you see today. The story goes that my father, Claude Fontenelle, was looking for a room to rent. He had immigrated to England in 1956, and he was living in Yorkshire with his brother. So things had begun to get a little difficult for him, so he decided to move to London. In those days, the signs in people's windows would say, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. So he had to really struggle to try to find somewhere. But he managed to find a house that was being rented to West Indians in Honor Oak, South London. This was my Auntie Muriel's house, and she was renting it to other West Indians, other fellow West Indians. So he knocked on the door, and he said he's looking for a room. And she said, come in, I got a room. Then she said, are you Guyanese? And he said, yes. And then she said, oh, okay, I have my sister here who's staying with me. And she introduced my dad to her sister, and the rest is history. They say, he came to look for a room and found a wife. My mother and father were married in 1960. They bought their first house in 1961 in Finsbury Park, North London, where myself and Natalie were born in that house in 10 Connaught Road. My mom worked at Littlewoods Pools as an accountant and later became a civil servant in England for several years. One day she was told by her company branch that the company was moving to Scotland, and she said, that's too cold for me. The Guyana government was offering expats an opportunity to go back to Guyana for job opportunities, and they would pay their families' flights as well. So she decided to take advantage of the opportunity and go back to Guyana. She was offered a job at the Bank of Guyana in 1972. And after working there for 2 years, she got a job at the NIS. She got a job at the NIS National Insurance Scheme. Now that was the job that us as kids remember her most for. She rose to the position of Deputy Finance Officer, which was a pretty big position in those days. But my mom quickly let you know how disciplined she was during this time. Me and Claude used to say that she should have been a member of a baseball team or cricket team because she could throw shoes and make the shoe bend around the corner. I've seen her hit Claude at the back of the head when he was trying to run away. Right? She picked up a can of something out of the kitchen, and I swear the thing bent like a curved ball and hit him at the back of the head. My mom had a chest freezer that she would keep all her best foods in, and she would put a lock on it. So one day, me and Claude, well, it was really more Claude more than me. We broke into the chest freezer and got all the good stuff out, right? Safe to say, Claude got the worst beating in his life, right? Because I wasn't going to take the blame for him, right? But it didn't matter anyway. My mother beat me too anyway, right? I don't remember Wendy ever getting beaten when she was a child. It was always me, Natalie, or Claude. My mother really made Claude and Wendy went to the best schools in Guyana. They were both very smart. When Claude was younger, whenever he misbehaved, my mom would send him to a room. She would send him to a room to read a book for punishment. One day she came in the room and he was reading an encyclopedia. Me and Natalie and Wendy would always say that he was her favorite because of this. But as I grew up, I came to learn that we were all her favorite. My mom and dad bought Wendy bikes for school. Claude had a chopper, a red one. Wendy had a Rally 20, a purple one. I remember it like it was yesterday. She used to drive me and Natalie to school and give us lunch money to buy peanut punch and puri. We remembered how Christmas was her favorite time of the year. She would make apple turnover cake, and then I remember the garlic pork hanging in the ceiling with the cloves sticking in it. Don't judge me on the pork thing, all right? Okay. We had black cake, roti, roast chicken with all the trimmings. That was the best time. My mom used to sing in the choir, and she had a very good voice. When she went to church, she knew every hymn, all the words, without even looking in the book. I was always amazed at that. While I was growing up in Guyana, I must have stolen fruits from every neighbor's yard where we used to live. One day, the man from behind the house where we used to live, he come and he said, Mrs. Fontenelle, this boy been in my yard again and thief out all the coconut. My mother smiled and told the man, "Don't worry, I'm going to deal with him." She remembered all the times I used to make her laugh, and she spared me that day. She could have beaten me, but she didn't. She must have said to herself, "I'm tired of beating this boy." What she would do whenever she thought that we were being too spoiled, she would send us to stay with Auntie Brenda in Agricola. The Gill family had 10 children. So if you include me and Natalie, that's 12. And then if you include all the neighbors' kids, Auntie Brenda would have 15 kids in the yard at one time. I don't remember Claude and Wendy going to Auntie Brenda. Somehow it was always me and Natalie. Auntie Brenda would make flour porridge, and you had to eat it. I used to cry, but it didn't matter. You had to eat it. Up to this day, I don't like flour porridge. I'm sure Natalie didn't like the flour porridge either. We used to hide food we didn't like and pretend to be eating it. We love you, Auntie Brenda. My mother always liked to laugh. The only way I can stay out of trouble is if I can make her laugh. And trust me, I did plenty of that. She was always sewing or knitting or making curtains. She was always doing something. She was either planting a tree or flowers, or sometimes she'd be in the garden trimming the hedges while my dad was at work, sometimes 7 days a week. My daughter Toya told me a story one time here in Jacksonville. Grandma put all the kids in the shower, and she would have a bucket and a bowl, and you weren't allowed to run the shower. You had to use the bucket and the bowl to shower. Well, who told Toya to do her own thing? Toya turned on the shower. Her grandmother yanked her out of the shower. Who the hell tell you to run the water? And she beat Toya, waxing, ply. My mother was a very disciplined woman. When her and my dad bought their house in Jacksonville, they were given a 30-year mortgage and they paid it off in 15 years. It was safe to say that my mother never stayed nowhere for long. She went from Guyana to England, and then back to Guyana, and then back to England, and then she finally ended up here in the United States. She was always striving for the next opportunity. When she moved to America, she worked for a nice family in New Jersey, Debbie and her husband, and she looked after their daughter Susan. She worked as a home assistant for that family, and they were very kind to my mom. And we would like to thank them for that. Thank you, Debbie. While here in Jacksonville, in around 1991, after leaving New York, she went back to school and became a certified public accountant. She taught me how to do my taxes. After a few months of being a CPA, she found it challenging to get a job because of her age. At that time, they were hiring mainly younger people over her. Well, what does she do? She pivots again, goes back to school, goes back to nursing, and becomes an LPN, and worked at 2 hospitals here in Jacksonville. She worked at the Memorial Hospital at University Boulevard for 5 years, and then she went on to work at Baptist St. Vincent in Riverside until her retirement in 2004. When my dad passed in 2004, my mother missed her soulmate. Her eyesight got worse, battling glaucoma. She had a fall at her home, which resulted in surgery on her head. My sister Natalie lived with my mom and was her caregiver. I was her caregiver until her health became more difficult to manage. She moved in with me and Sharon in 2014. We looked after her for 8 years until things got too complicated for us. During this time, I really learned how to love my mother. People say they love someone, but when you have to care for someone, it's a different type of love. I have to truly thank my wife and for all that she did, because if it wasn't for her, none of this would have been possible. So I really have to thank my wife for that. I was living with 2 of the most important women in my life at the same time in the same house. I didn't realize how blessed I was. During the time at the nursing home, I would take my grandkids to go see her. Kaleem used to say to me he wanted her to make it to 100. I would tell her about Kyrie and his grades and how smart he was in school, and she would say, he sounds like me. I would tell her about little Theo playing football, and she would love to hear those stories. I also told her about Chosen, and she said, Chosen? Is that her name? And I said, yes, that's her name. And she said, wow, she's going to be something special. My son Theo said to me, if it wasn't for Grandma, he wouldn't have been here in America doing the job that he's doing as an aircraft maintenance manager. Thank you, Grandma. My sister Wendy and her partner Alex came over to see my mom 8 months ago, and we had a great time. I even took my mom to P.F. Chang's in the town center, and then we had a barbecue for her that day. Hubert and Eugenie came over that day too. Thank you for coming, Wendy. Melanie and Vanessa came in April 2025 and brought her grandkids and her great-grandkids to see her. These pictures and videos of that trip would last an eternity, thanks to Vanessa and Melanie. Petronella Fontenelle had a long and prosperous life. I was a great example to all of us. Not only was she our mom, but she was also an auntie to many nephews and nieces, too many to mention here today. She was kind and very loving. She always wants you to put your best foot forward. She actually is responsible for half the people immigrated to America in this room. She was a rock star of a woman, and she was our mother. My mother's twin brother, Joseph Lees, died 6 years ago on June the 27th, and my mom died on June the 26th. They were born on the same day. They were born on the same day and died a day apart. They were born the same day and died a day apart. We thought that he came to get her. My mother was an ambitious woman. She was a pioneer of a black movement, and she achieved achieved and accomplished many things in her career as a teacher, accountant, and nurse. She was hard on you where she had to, but she never hesitated to tell you how much she loved you. Just in closing, I leave you with my mother's quote that she would always say: if you lose hope and you're in search of strength to achieve your dreams, get on your knees and pray to God for guidance. Pull your pants up and just get on with it. Thank you.